I know that your time is precious to you. You have many ways that you could choose to spend this time, both professionally and personally, and so it means a lot to me that you've chosen to spend the day with LifeRay. This year is our 10-year anniversary as a company. We started LifeRay in 2004. I know this is only our second LPSF in the UK, but we've actually been around for a while now. I've been had the good fortune to meet lots of great people from all around the world, and so it's been a time of reflection, of Thanksgiving, and a lot of that is also being thankful to all of you who have supported us throughout that time. This is just to take a quick look back at what we've been able to accomplish in those 10 years. This is a photo of our last company annual retreat. We try to have as many of our staff from all around the world join us in Southern California in December, which is probably one of the, not the worst place to be in the dead of winter. So we were in San Diego last year. This year we'll be in Palm Springs, and it's just a time that we all get together, build relationships, and celebrate what we've accomplished. Just to take a look at how that breaks down. So we have about 550 people around the world. That means that in 10 years, somehow I've managed to be able to feed and clothe 550 families, hopefully. But what I like about this picture more than just the sheer number of people is that so much of it is outside of the US. And so a lot of our presence is based here in Europe, certainly here in the UK and France and Germany, but also a significant presence in Hungary and Spain. We also have a lot of innovation, a lot of business traction in Brazil and in APAC as well. And what this tells me is that our technology is not only addressing needs from around the world, but also that we're informing ourselves of those needs from around the world. So a simple example is a user profile. Here in the UK and in the US, typically you have a first name and a family name. But in places like Spain, for example, they have two family names because they take the name of the father and the mother, and actually ad infinitum back into time, if you're familiar with Spanish culture. And in places like Japan, you have the family name first, and then the given name after. So it's these little cultural details that come into LifeRay as a product and as a business, and it's been very important to us to be a different company in terms of how we engage with the world and how we really try to be sort of present and incarnational in all of the different cultures we interact with. Just a quick view of where we are throughout the world. Our latest offices have been opened in Singapore and in Casablanca. We're making some efforts to enter the African market this year as well. In the last 10 years, we've been very fortunate to not only be recognized by the open source community and by our customers, but also by the analyst community. This year, we were very happy with the results of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. As of 2014, we are placed just behind IBM in terms of our completeness of vision and our ability to execute. And that vision is really the main thing that I want to share with you today. This is significant, but of course, many Silicon Valley companies, that are funded, that are backed, and have a lot of money being pumped into them, can achieve this sort of success. There's a company called Jive, for example. They make great social software. They've been backed with, I think, $40 million. They're actually still not profitable, but that's part of their strategy. They spend a lot on sales and marketing to sort of achieve that market leadership and to establish a strong customer base so that they can then build on that customer base, grow revenue, and then become profitable years into the future. At LifeRay, we've actually taken a different path. So over the last 10 years, we've had $0 of outside funding. And I think this is significant for a number of reasons. It's been very important to us as a company to have the kind of control needed in order to fulfill our vision, which is to use business as a means to impact communities, to use business as a means to solve some of the larger problems that we face in the world today. So looking back, I think this is really significant. And then perhaps most significant is just what my employees tell me about their feelings about LifeRay, being proud to be part of a company that wants to make a difference and wants to be a little bit, to take an alternate path. This is just one of the websites that have been built with LifeRay. This is an organization called Banyan Tree. They have some luxury resorts and villas in all throughout Asia. And then this is another website that was built by a group called Herenlo in the Netherlands. And these two very contrasting efforts. So Herenlo, they made an intranet for disabled people. They used an Angular framework to tie into a LifeRay backend and basically present the internet in a controlled fashion that disabled people can enjoy. And these two sites really exemplify for me what we've been able to achieve as LifeRay over the last decade, which is providing enterprise-class, open-source software that meets the needs of cutting-edge companies like Banyan Tree and our customers here in the UK, but also having something that's significant and worthwhile for nonprofit organizations like Herenlo to be able to use and leverage. And for those of you who are here, you may come from all sides of that spectrum, and my sales guys might disagree, but I'm just happy to hear anyone investing the time and energy to learn LifeRay, to use it in your organizations in whatever way. And I hope that whatever subscription services we have, if they're valuable to you, that you would consider them. If not, that's fine, and you're free to use the software in whatever way you like. So that's a very, very quick whirlwind tour of what we've been doing over the last decade. I want to turn now and look at where LifeRay wants to head in the next 10 years. And for the last 10 years, I would say that LifeRay as a technology has really been about taking back-end systems, bringing them together into a single interface, maybe adding some content, collaboration tools, and presenting them through a web browser for people to get work done. And that might have been through a public-facing website. It might have been through your intranet. It might have been through a customer portal. But I really believe that not only as an industry, not only as a technology industry, but also society as a whole is going through a significant transformation that's being enabled by a lot of the technologies that we're all very familiar with: mobile devices, the internet, cloud technology, and sort of the cultural transformation of social and what we've called Web 2.0 in the past. All of these things you may have heard Gartner or other software vendors talk about this, but they're really coming together to change significant aspects of our daily lives and the way that we do business. Now, the buzzword of the moment seems to be digital business. This is how a lot of people are talking about this transformation. When I hear the word digital, I usually think of the old Casio watches with the little LCD screens. But I guess now it means, the internet being sort of integrated into the physical world. When we talk about digital transformation, a lot of us might think of something very, very advanced. So I'm sure you've heard of the Tesla electric car. It's got a huge LCD screen as its interface. It's all electric, super nice, right? You may think about wearable technology. So there were these Dutch researchers from the University of Eindhoven who were living and working in Beijing, and they got so tired of the air pollution that they decided to create a wearable suit that would do air filtration. It would have monitoring on pollution levels and all that stuff. And this is just a view of all of the kit that was involved in creating this suit. But I was trying to think of an example of digital business transformation that might hit closer to home and be something that we can all relate to. And this is what I came up with. So we've all been here before, right? And I believe that digital business transformation has a chance to address this very, very strongly felt need in all of our lives. If you think about the business process behind this situation in a public restroom, it's basically this, right? Because you can't have someone there all the time manning the toilets, you basically have people check in on a half-hour or hourly basis, right? And so the next time at 8 o'clock when the maintenance person comes by, he's going to note that the toilet paper is out. He's going to replace the roll. And you might have your own analogs of this kind of business process in your business. And the naive thing to do when you're trying to transform that process is just to electronicize it. So the obvious thing to do is to keep everything the same, but put it on an iPad, right? And there is some benefit of this. Now, instead of actually scanning those sheets in, you can just email it or, save it in Dropbox or whatever you do. But when we talk about digital business transformation, and as we envision what might be possible with this, we're actually thinking much more. So let's imagine in this situation that when you actually still have, a centimeter's worth of material left, that the internet-enabled dispenser actually tells the maintenance person ahead of time that there's a refill pending. And so now we're no longer relying on this business process of the hourly check-in. You're actually using data that's coming back from the field to change the process. Of course, there's going to be all sorts of adjustments that need to be made on the routine side of things. Maybe in the in-between time of the hourly check-ins that maintenance worker was off doing other things. And so now if things are very ad hoc, you're going to have to think about, what needs to change in order to support that. But this is hopefully a clear example of how this digital technology is going to force people to rethink how the business actually works. Another example from education. So I talked to a lot of people in the publishing industry, and of course, in journalism, this sort of disruption has been going on for a very long time, mostly because content and news have been commoditized, and we've created these new gatekeepers, Google and Facebook, through which people consume information. The education sector, I think it's still not completely hit them yet, so they're still selling their editions of their textbooks with the minor updates that allow them to, maybe get a whole school district to buy a whole new set of books every year. But I think the transformation is going to come, and it is a matter of them getting ahead of that. So I thought, how could digital technology transform education publishing? So, hopefully not relying on something as insidious as Google Glass. One can imagine that a smart, digitally enabled textbook would have not only the learning material, but the metastructure behind that learning material that would allow them to adaptively present information in ways that are personalized and specific to each student. Certainly, according to their progress in the material and how quickly or slowly they're learning that material, but also maybe being able to personalize the specific examples and information that allow that student to engage more deeply with the material. So here's a simple example. Maybe there's a young boy who's learning fractions, and he's reading through the examples. And the first one talks about jelly beans and chocolates, and of course all kids love candy, and so he's like, oh yeah, I want to figure out how much candy this guy John has. And the second example is about violin practice, and maybe for whatever reason this child has had a traumatic experience with his violin teacher. Maybe he just hates music. Maybe he's physically disabled, and so presenting this example of violin is just going to make him feel bad about that. this last example isn't, or that last situation isn't really addressed, but if the child is rather more of an outdoorsy type of child and loves baseball and football, presenting that kind of example might be better for him. And so imagine this digital textbook. It's following the movements of the child's eyes, noticing that he's reading the same word problem over and over again. So obviously he's having some trouble with that. It references word problems he's looked at in the past, found that the sports examples are most helpful for him, and automatically updates the example for him. In the automotive and repair industry, we imagine a scenario where, of course, the internet-enabled and connected car is going to be able to signal to the cloud that certain maintenance problems are cropping up. And again, that first step is it's great to just know that information and to get that data back from the cars to either the owner's portal or to the manufacturer. This sort of thing might enable, for example, more proactive automotive recalls when there's a faulty airbag or something faulty in the transmission. But it might also be a possibility or an opportunity for a value add. So let's say that this internet-connected car has been tracking the movements of the driver, of course, with their permission, and they roughly know that this person goes to work here, their home is here, and their commute generally has them leaving the office around 6 o'clock. And so now we know that the car is experiencing some maintenance issues, and we know that the person has a fairly predictable commute. The system also knows that one of the authorized repair shops that are on the way home for this person also had a last-minute cancellation at 6 p.m. for a maintenance repair. And so the automotive repair shop doesn't want to just have that appointment slot go unused. The owner doesn't want to have the hassle of being without their car for an afternoon while they're getting it repaired. And so we're basically bringing all of these needs together. It might be a little bit impulsive, but if we offer the person a discount to stop by on the way home, they'll get their car fixed up. We'll use up the appointment slot, and everyone's happy. So I'll leave it to you, and I think I'll be at the Expert Exchange later to discuss more of what this may mean for your specific industry. But I do really think that this is a question of not if, but when. And so as much as you can get ahead of the digital business transformation that's going on, I think would be beneficial for you and your companies. I want to talk now about what this has meant for the practice and art of marketing. If you were with me last year, you may remember in my talk I talked about the Rubinacci family, which for the last 100 years has been tailoring fine suits in the north of Italy, I believe. And I used him primarily as an example of how we've really moved from a very personal, one-on-one way of doing business to the sort of impersonal but far-reaching aspects of mass media. And so as we've developed print technology, radio and television, we've moved from having conversations to having messaging. We've moved from this sort of thing to corporations shouting at people with things that they're supposed to buy or things that they're supposed to want. Because of this dynamic of no longer being a conversation, we've developed the practice of marketing since about the 1950s. We've developed things like segments and personas. We've presumed that everyone of a certain age range and an earning level and life stage has similar needs. And of course, that does work for things like, let's say, detergent and laundry machines, maybe less so for things like fashion or personal devices. But in the internet era, which was at first mistaken as mass media, this really has been turned on its head. Now, instead of companies shouting at people, we have people really shouting back at companies. And Liferay, I think, is a really great example of how we try as much as possible to listen to what you're telling us. This has also changed the way that we should be thinking about how to build websites. So before the internet, as long as you could control the channels, you would have the attention of the people. And so content was like water coming through a hose. There was less of it, and it came through very specific places. Now, as you all know, for any of you getting bored with my talk, you can check your Twitter feed, you can check your email. There's all sorts of things you can be doing rather than listening to me. One blogger has characterized it as going from a scarcity of content to a scarcity of attention. The obvious, thing to say about this is, of course, that now instead of many people looking at one screen, we have one person looking at many screens. And so this should really change. This reality should change the way that we build websites. And yet, a lot of us still think of websites as our front page, or we think of it as our storefront. We think of it as, well, for whatever reason, someone's going to come to Liferay.com on a whim, and they're going to peruse and browse all the things that we have to offer. But it's really not the case. And so we have this discussion internally. Our events team wants to have more visibility for their events, so they ask to put a big banner on the events page. And yet, if it's the first time for you to come to Liferay.com, an event like this really has very little relevance to you. And so I like to say that in the physical world, it was geographical space or the limited space of a newspaper front page that mattered. But in the digital world, it's relevance that matters. This is a photo of a Amazon warehouse. This just shows the sheer volume of things that are available on Amazon.com. And no matter how specific your niche, Amazon is going to have that book or that item that you're looking for. So how do we then make this warehouse reality reflected in the way that we build our websites? Well, one interesting thing is that part of the transformation is not just about technology, it's actually cultural. We all use the internet. We all use Google, or maybe if you're afraid of Google, you're using DuckDuckGo or something else. But the way you use the internet is very familiar to you. There's something you want to know, you enter it into a search box, and you get all these results. You browse through the results until you find what you're looking for. And how you decide whether that thing is what you're looking for is if the content really answers the question that you have, if it really meets your need, if it's useful and relevant to you. So this man, he's in the swimming pool business, not exactly the cutting edge of technology. And yet he learned this lesson very early on in this transformation of digital marketing. He realized that his website was all about him and how great he was and how great his company was compared to his competitors. Well, anyone who sees that in a Google search result is going to immediately dismiss that as marketing, as advertising, as messaging, right? And he, in 2007, during the financial crisis, nobody was buying swimming pools anymore. And so he had some time to think about what his business needed to do in order to survive. And he basically said, if I just put the answers to people's questions on my website, they're going to read my website. And so he went through a transformation process where all he did was just answer all the questions that normally someone would have had to pick up the phone and call him to get, establish that trust relationship with the viewer, and then basically believe that if he was helpful to them on the website, they would trust him enough to consider him to sell the swimming pool. And one of the most interesting things he did was he made a page that listed not his company, but a list of all his competitors in that region. And when he did that, basically, a lot of people started linking to that page because it was very useful. All the contact information was there, pros and cons. This person sells this kind of swimming pool. They have a good reputation for this, or whatever, right? And as that page became more and more useful to more people, Google basically ranked it higher and higher in the rankings. And so now anyone and everyone looking for a swimming pool in that region of the United States was hitting his website first. And reading that very useful piece of content, they said, well, let's see what else these people have to say. They'd end up spending about 30 minutes on the website. And it got to a point where anyone who had read at least 30 pages of content on their website would buy 80% of the time. That's a 4 out of 5 success rate for qualified leads. That's pretty cool, right? And so that's a very subtle but important cultural shift that is happening. And so digital transformation is not just about technology. It's also very much about changing the way that we think about how we want to do business. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to run through the rest of this very quickly. One of the transformations that Liferay has had to go through, I mentioned before about our events team wanting to slap a banner on the front page. Part of our cultural shift was the aha moment of, we don't have to have a single front page. We can actually have several. So if you go to liferay.com today, this is the default view that you see if you're a first-time visitor. But if you've filled out a form and you've visited Liferay a number of times, you're going to see a banner about events. And these days, actually, we show you a banner about our Gartner ranking because we figure you're farther along in the buyer journey with us. This might be of relevance to you. We also create a number of different, what we call microsites or landing pages, and these are specific to different demographics. So for this one, it's German CMOs and communicators. We have one for US financial services. We have a number of sites for all of our different events throughout the world. And the idea here is that not everyone is going to come to our web property through the front page. A lot of it is going to be through email campaigns. It's going to be through, talking to Mike McCauley, and he's going to say, hey, thanks for coming to Gartner. Are you interested in LPSF UK? If you are, here's the website, right? So there's a lot more ways in which people are going to come to your online presence. So you should actually optimize your website to be able to accommodate all of these different groups of people. So where does that leave Liferay and where we want to take the technology over the next 10 years? Well, we know that it's going to be not just a portal. We don't know if it's going to be called a user experience platform or a digital business platform, but we know roughly what it's going to look like. So if the problem we've solved over the last 10 years is having too many systems and wanting to aggregate those, now the problem is getting bigger because today it's not just that you have too many systems. Now there are multiple different ways that you can interface with and access those systems. So this is what we've done for the last 10 years. In the last 3 years or so, we've been experiencing mobile apps and sites. And in the coming years, it's going to be everything from watches to, RFID tagged bottles of water going through the supply chain to internet refrigerators and everything else. And of course, as always, we want to get more and more nuanced and elegant about the way that we engage with individual people, of course, of different kinds, employees, partners, customers, also different geographies and cultures, and ultimately different stages in their relationship and journey with you. So there's all of these different factors. We got to bring them all together, have a single platform that can address this. So instead of building silos that have no awareness of where you've been in the intranet or the portal or the website, we want to move toward this model where Liferay supports the idea of an interaction journey. So in the bottom, I've tried to represent that you have all sorts of individuals. Their touch points are very diverse. The systems that they need to interact with are in the back. So if we were focused before on building websites and having browser-based stuff, now it's almost becoming even more abstract where Liferay is going to be that thing in the middle that keeps track of, your interaction in the mobile app, your interaction in the store, your interaction on the website, and so forth. Of course, we're going to have still all of the out-of-the-box functionality that you've come to know and appreciate, but we're going to make it a lot easier to consume those things, not just from web-based applications, but from your mobile devices, internet devices. We're going to continue to support building experiences through portlets on pages, but we're also investing very much in the mobile world. You're going to see some of that later today in the product roadmap. We've got this cool thing called Screens, which is going to make it really easy to build mobile apps. And we're also investing in standalone, separate applications built on popular JavaScript frameworks like Angular, Backbone, and so forth. The picture of the portal is essentially changing from something like this, which is portlets in a portal, to something like this, where a diverse set of things way beyond the browser is going to all come together to create a single overall experience. So if that's the future, you might be thinking, well, that's all fine and dandy, but we're still here. We're still trying to get our heads wrapped around having social capability in our intranet. Or we're still trying to update our website from being a simple brochure site to actually having, some forms and things on it. So how does that relate to me? And I would simply say that all of the work that you need to do to build this is going to lead to the sort of things that you're going to want to do, even if that's 3 years out or 5 years out. All of the integration to backend services that you might need to do in order to have a modern intranet or a website is going to be very helpful to you as you digitize your business processes and unify your interactions across all of these different experiences. In other words, in order to get here, you really need to start with here. So that's the vision that we have. I think one of the things that I hope Liferay will be set apart with is around the issue of privacy. So I'll step on my soapbox for a little bit. If you look at the major industry players, Google and Apple, I think Google is right now banking on the fact that people are not going to care that much about their private and personal information, whereas Apple's business model is not dependent on that. And I think they've actually started to go out on a limb and say that we care very much about privacy. If you look at things that Tim Cook is saying, if you look at the way iOS 8 has evolved, where now they make it very clear that there's an app using your location, for example, I think they're kind of putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is what we're going to be about. Google is going to continue to try to get you to give away as much of that information as possible. So for Liferay, I personally believe that this digital transformation is going to happen. I believe it's up to us as a vendor and to you as the people who use our software to use it in an ethical and a responsible way that builds trust with your customers. And so one of the things that are very interesting to me is how we as a vendor can be responsible in this pursuit of transformation, giving people ways to have a lot of control over how their information is used and so forth. So that's the conversation we're going to enter into in the next 5 years. I hope that you can add to that. We're still, of course, solidifying the vision. We're still trying to figure it out ourselves. And you've helped us to get as far as we have today. And I hope that you'll continue the journey with us. Thank you.